Alrighty guys, it is Qaaman here today and I'm bringing you another video segment doing another questionnaire. And some of you have been a little bit upset because I've been answering so many questions that start from the top, and the main reason why I do that is because of the fact that whenever I answer a question by typing it, it refreshes the whole page. But if I do a video, I can simply delete the question once I finish answering it, and I've decided that I'm gonna be nice, and I went back an entire month. It would take me forever to go back to the dawn of time when I started doing these questions, but I'll probably get to those questions in the future, and I'll stop answering all of the most recent questions so that all of you guys can get a fair share of, asking me certain questions on here. So without wasting any more time, I'm going to answer these questions from more than a month ago. So let's start off. Would present Trunks as an adult be stronger than future Trunks as an adult? Well, I think this question's kind of self-explanatory, Johnny, because the reason I say this is because when you look at the fact that present Trunks was able to go Super Saiyan as a child, that means that if he had trained at the same rate that the future Trunks did, considering he also has Vegeta as a training partner versus future Gohan, I definitely think that he would be stronger. Now, if you also factor in that at a certain point future Trunks doesn't even have a training partner, I definitely think that present Trunks definitely had significantly more potential than the future Trunks. But let me just say something really quick. In the manga, future Trunks was able to turn Super Saiyan when he was training with future Gohan. We don't know how long he was able to do it, but he was shown training with future Gohan already as a Super Saiyan, so we don't know exactly, but I think it's present Trunks. Alright, let's see. Do you think if Vegeta trained hard enough, he can find an ascended version of Super Saiyan 2? No, I don't think so, and here's why. Because if you really look at it, you have Super Saiyan and then you have Super Saiyan 2, and then if you look at all of the different ascended forms, all of the ascended forms were basically like a pre-Super Saiyan 2, you know what I mean? Like, with Trunks' Ultra Super Saiyan form basically being just like an upgrade in power but like reducing speed, whereas Super Saiyan 2 was the true transformation. So I don't necessarily think at that point that they would be able to have an ascended form of a Super Saiyan 2. Maybe you could have like a Super Saiyan 2 with like extra buffed muscles, but I don't think so at that point where the Z Fighters would have mastered their training. Alright, let's see. What would happen if Bulma never had Trunks with Vegeta but instead had a kid with Yamcha during the Android Saga? I find this really interesting because in my second most recent video, which was what if Goku killed Frieza with a spirit bomb, you can check that out on Blackenfist's channel, because of my whole copyright strike, which is now gone, by the way. I'm actually, basically explained that it was possible for Bulma to have a child with Yamcha, and I also explained that their child wouldn't be anywhere near as strong as the Kid Trunks, and if that child of Bulma and Yamcha, let's just call him, the human Trunks, for all sakes and purposes, if that version of Trunks existed in the history of Trunks, he wouldn't really be strong enough to really make an impact with future Gohan. So he would be weaker both for the present and for the future, and that would change a lot of things in terms of who could kill Cell and all that. So that would change the series a lot, and I'll definitely consider it. That's actually a pretty solid video topic. Alright, let's see. What would happen if Frieza was completely obliterated in dynamic explosion and wasn't able to come to Earth, therefore leaving Trunks to just awkwardly introduce himself to the Z Fighters? Well, I kind of think this falls under my video, which is what if Goku killed Frieza with the Spirit Bomb, because in that video I also explained that at some point King Cole would somehow get to Earth because of the fact that his henchmen would have, researched the conversations that were spied on through the scouter and stuff, which obviously indicated that they were from Earth and all of that stuff. So I definitely think that King Cole could still come to Earth at some point. Obviously, knowing that his son is dead, he would want revenge. And I think if we're talking about the main timeline in which a Trunks would be able to come back, I don't really think it would change the main timeline that much. I just think that Goku in the future timeline and Trunks in the main timeline would just have to kill King Cole instead of Frieza. But I don't think they would change anything considering Goku would have already been a Super Saiyan. Alright. If the Fly robot was watching the Z Fighters until Piccolo destroyed it and Cell was fully grown, then why didn't it take the data from when Goku was demonstrating the instant transmission to the others? Was it unable to, or was it just writing? You know what? That's an extremely good question. And I never actually thought about it like this, but there's actually a small plot hole when Cell was explaining how the spy models somehow were able to observe Frieza and King Cole before they met their demise by Trunks, which doesn't necessarily make complete sense in the alternate timeline. And you can watch my alternate timeline theory to get a better explanation. But the best way I think I can answer that is maybe after Trunks had killed Frieza and King Cole in what would have been, I guess you would consider well, it doesn't make any sense because Cell comes from the original timeline. You guys probably will be confused with what I'm saying if you haven't seen that video. But in the original timeline, it wouldn't necessarily make sense, because it wouldn't make sense for Trunks to have killed Frieza in that time, which is where Cell came from. But at the same time, my guess is that maybe the spy robots left after Goku had defeated Frieza and King Cole in that alternate timeline, and maybe they just left before he demonstrated the instant transmission. That's the best way I could explain it. But it could be a plot hole. Alright, why do you hate sagas? I personally thought it was fun if you were playing with a friend, but it would get pretty boring if you're playing by yourself. Trey Lane. Okay, Trey Lane, I think when you say sagas, I am 90% sure you're referring to Dragon Ball Z Sagas, the video game. Now, I don't remember. It's funny that I said it's a bad game. If you can remind me in the comment section where I said that, I'm actually curious, because I don't remember saying it, but I definitely think Dragon Ball Z Sagas was a garbage game. And honestly, the reason I say that is because maybe it was just my experience playing it, but the game had a lot of bugs. There was a lot of glitches. I mean, there was so many problems with the game where you could only fly as high as you jump. Some points of the game were just ridiculously just too overpowered. Like, I remember when I was playing in the History of Trunks mission, that like you would beat the living shit out of the random robots for like 2 or 3 minutes before they actually die. It was just, the bugs of the game were really bad. Now, I love Dragon Ball Z and I played that game a bunch of times with my friends, but I mean, as I've gotten older, I've learned to understand that game had significant limitations to it. Alright, what would have happened if Super Saiyan 3 Goku beat Fat Boo? That's actually a very good topic, and it's very simple. I don't necessarily think I can make a whole video on this, but if Super Saiyan 3 Goku beat Fat Boo, that does two things. That means Goku's gonna stay dead because the Elder Kai would have never given up his life. As a matter of fact, now that I actually think about it, the Elder Kai would have never been released because Goku would have killed Fat Boo before he even went to go see Gohan in the afterlife. So the Elder Kai would have never been released. Goku would stay dead. Gohan would go back to Earth at some point and do nothing. Goten and Trunks would probably never learn fusion. And Vegeta would never come back to life himself. So, as a matter of fact, it's actually a good thing that Goku didn't beat Fat Boo. Alright, Nail versus Piccolo pre-Nail fusion. Well, I mean, considering the fact that Nail... I don't necessarily know how Namekian fusion multiplies power levels, but considering the fact that Nail was so much weaker than Frieza, with his power level being around that of the middle tier Ginyu Force members like Bird, Jason, Raccoon, I would think that Piccolo was stronger because of the fact that, I mean, number one, he's obviously the more dominant Namek to begin with. And when you consider the fact that although Nail gave him that power boost, Piccolo must have been pretty strong himself to want Gohan and Krillin to wish him back to life. And I think that's the biggest indication that shows that Piccolo was pretty confident in his own power. Alright, let's see. Do you think that the Super Saiyan multiplier is different for fusions than for normal Saiyans? And if so, is it a greater boost or a weaker one? Now, I don't know exactly about multipliers. To be completely honest with you, anonymous person, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan on multipliers because I just think they're just made up BS. And the reason why I think they're bullshit is because, I mean, I just can't see, conceptually speaking, that if I transform into a state, it's gonna exactly multiply my power level by X amount. But in regards to your actual question, I think that it would be different for fusions, considering the fact that when two people fuse, that actually allows them to multiply their own power in itself, which in return would explain how turning Super Saiyan would definitely change it. Alright, what if the world knew Gohan killed Cell? That's a very good topic, but that's more of a social topic than a serious topic, because I mean, if you think about it, Hercule wouldn't get as much recognition, but Hercule would still be really popular. Because Hercule's still, popular in his own right, but even before, Gohan had killed Cell. And when you consider the fact that, Gohan lives a pretty relatively quiet country-style life, I think it would be bad for him because a lot of people would, be interrogating him, and I think he would self-educate himself instead of go to school, because I don't think Chi-Chi would want him to go to school with all that public pressure. And at the same time, his relationship with Videl may be very, 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 very different. I don't know exactly how different it would be, but I definitely think if she started off knowing that he had killed Cell instead of figuring it out later on, I think that would have changed their relationship for sure. What religion do you believe in? I do not necessarily like revealing personal information about myself, especially talking about religion, but let's just say that I have a very, very, very open religious aspect of mind. That's all I'm gonna say. What if Qaaman was in Dragon Ball Z Goku's son? Okay, what if Qaaman was in Dragon Ball Z as Goku's son? I mean, I don't necessarily know how I would answer this. I mean, if I'm Goku's son, then that would mean Chi-Chi would be my mother, right? Well, then that would mean that I'd probably have a very similar lifestyle to what Gohan had, considering the fact that my mom would want me to, she would obviously want me to study more, and, my dad would want me to fight. But at the same time, I'm a pretty brave guy, so I don't think I would have been afraid when Piccolo started training me early in my life. And I think I would have had more control over my emotions. But who knows, maybe that could have been a detriment. Alright, let's see. How strong do you think Piccolo was right before he fused with Nail? I can't give you an exact answer to this. But if I had to take a guess, considering the fact that when Piccolo fused with Nail, he was able to, he was shown to be a little bit stronger than second form Frieza, I would say that he was probably the strength, if not a little bit stronger than Frieza in his first form. But I mean, that might be a stretch. You might say, how did he get that strong within a couple of months? Which is kind of weird, because if you think about it, the point of time from them dying on Earth to going to King Kai's planet wasn't that long. I can't give you the specifics, but I think it was about like a month or two. So I mean, if he went from being as weaker than Nappa to being as strong as Frieza's first form in a couple months, that's insane. So I would definitely say he's around the strength of a Ginyu Force member, just to make it more sensible. Alright, let's see. Super Vegeta Ultra Super Saiyan Stage 1 versus Super Trunks Ultra Super Saiyan Stage 2. I mean, honestly, I'm gonna have to go with I would have to go with Super Trunks Ultra Super Saiyan Stage 2, because the reason I say this is he has significantly more power, and although you could argue that he'd be slower, I would think that Super Vegeta is somewhat of a reduction in speed in itself. So I'm saying a lot more power with a little bit less speed, and significantly less power with not that much of a reduction in speed. I would have to give Trunks the edge on that, but that's just my thoughts. Qaaman, will you take recommendations from us for your next walkthrough? Sure, Samil Zorilla. I've been doing my Dragon Ball Z Legacy of Goku walkthrough, and I'm gonna finish that up soon. The thing is I've just had a lot of college stuff that I was dealing with over the last couple of weeks, but that's basically it. There's nothing wrong with me. Alright, let's see. hey, does Goku get a Zen Kai boost at any point during Dragon Ball? Yeah, it's hinted by Krillin even though it wasn't directly said. Here's the thing, guys. You gotta factor in that in Dragon Ball, people weren't able to sense power levels the same way that they do in Z. And I understand that in Dragon Ball they could sense power levels. I'm not saying they couldn't. But what I'm saying is the show didn't elaborate on it as much as they did in Dragon Ball Z. And with that said, I don't think Zenkai boosts ever stopped in Dragon Ball Z. I just think that people just stopped talking about them. But theoretically, it just doesn't make sense for the Zenkai boost to just stop working later on in the series. I just think they just didn't mention it, but I think that theoretically they still took place. So with that said, I do think Goku got several Zenkai boosts throughout Dragon Ball, especially when Krillin said Goku always came back stronger and stronger and stronger. Alright, let's see. What's up? I love your videos. I have a request. Hopefully you make it. When Vegeta and Gohan got into that fight and Piccolo told Vegeta to back off and then Vegeta agreed and he flew off, why do you think Vegeta didn't want to challenge Piccolo and who do you think would have won? That's a good question. I mean, because of the fact that Vegeta had gotten a Zenkai boost from Dende, I'm gonna have to say Vegeta. I mean, Piccolo didn't stand a chance against Frieza either in his final form. I mean, if you really think about it, Piccolo didn't even stand a chance against Frieza in his third form. And we don't know how Vegeta would have done against Frieza in his third form, but I mean, I would think that Vegeta was stronger because of that Zenkai boost. That's just my personal thought. But I could very well be wrong, but I'll have to give the edge to Vegeta, even though Piccolo's my favorite. Alright, let's see. Could you do a review of the Dragon Ball Z movies Blackenfist did? Now, I'm telling you right now, Trey Lane, I can do a bunch of videos. I have a bunch of topics that are done for the future, but I'm just letting you know that a lot of you tend to get upset when it takes me a lot of time to make videos at a faster pace, and I'm the type of person who chooses quality over quantity. So if I were to do a review of the Dragon Ball Z movies, you gotta factor in that would take a lot of time. And I was also planning on doing a Battle of Gods review by itself now that I've actually seen the English dub online. So I definitely think that, you know, if I ever do it, I might do it, but that would have to be at a point where I have significantly more time, because that's a very, very, very time-consuming video. Alright, I'm just going to open this up in another tab, and I'll comment on it later, because I don't have time to look at, you know, memes while I have, you know, almost 6,300 questions left to answer. So thanks, Mr. Protoman. Alright, King Kai versus Raditz. Well, I'm gonna have to say King Kai, even though it's kind of weird. I mean, sometimes you can learn to be stronger from a person who's weaker than you. You know what I mean? Like, for example, I mean, if you look throughout the series and you find a character like, let's say Master Roshi, right? Master Roshi can teach Oob how to be a better fighter, even though Oob has significantly more power than Master Roshi, because Master Roshi understands energy control. Master Roshi, you know, he's been doing martial arts for a long time, whereas Oob is a raw fighter. So I think that Raditz may be stronger than King Kai, but King Kai, you would just obviously know more skills. But who knows? I could be wrong. I don't look at power levels because I think power levels are BS. But you can check my old power level video out about the worst. It's actually not that old, like 2 months. The worst power levels ever, and I just did that because I show consistency between strength levels. But anyways, do you think that the battle between Vegeta and Goku in the Saiyan saga would have been different if Planet Vegeta wasn't destroyed? That's a very good question. I've happened to bump into a lot of really, really good questions today. I think it could make a difference, and the reason I say this is because if Planet Vegeta was not destroyed, that means that there's a bunch of Saiyans who still exist out there. So if Goku and, you know, and the rest of the gang managed to defeat Nappa and Vegeta, then I think that they might not spare Vegeta as much, because they might fear that all other Saiyans would come to Earth and would pose the same threat. Because of the fact that Vegeta was one of the few Saiyans who was still left, I think that kind of gave Goku that whole rival aspect with Vegeta, because it's like they were like the last of a kind versus, oh man, if I let Vegeta come, then he can come back with like 20 other Saiyans and just nuke my planet. So I definitely think that could have impacted it more if Planet Vegeta was still around. Alright, let's see. Do you think there is a possibility that Dragon Ball Z, the TV series, could be continuing after Battle of Gods 2? Now, I've talked to Blackenfist about this and Thundershot, and both of us agree that it's possible. Anything's possible. I mean, if you watch Blackenfist's videos, you would know that, I mean, he's made a lot of videos about Toonami, and he used to think that Toonami was gonna end. But at the same time, like, Toonami came back, which like shocked him and everybody. So you never know what could happen with Dragon Ball Z. I just don't think so at this point of Akira Toriyama's career that he'd be willing to go through and do a whole new Dragon Ball Z series. And if he did, I think it would take place in the gap between the tournament saga with Goku training Oob and the Battle of God sequence. So I think it's unlikely, but I think it's still possible. Can you think of a good question for me to ask you? I don't know. What do you think about my videos? How do you rate them? I don't know. You guys have to ask me the questions. I can't ask you to ask me the questions. Alright, let's see. Just curious, but if Gohan absorbed Boo, I think he's trying to say Buhan. If Buhan absorbed Janemba, would he stand a better chance against Vegito? Definitely. I think that he might even be able to defeat Vegito. I mean, if you consider the fact that Buhan, you know, I mean, he was much weaker than Vegeta. I'm not saying he was close, but I mean, you gotta think about how strong Janemba was. They had to fuse just to beat him. So if you consider the fact that he's adding a villain that's already strong enough to, you know, cause them to fuse in the first place, I definitely think that would you know, make an impact, because it's like Super Boo, who's already, you already need to fuse to beat Super Boo. And, you know, you also need to fuse to beat Janemba, so it's like you're fighting two fused villains, two villains that are necessary to beat while fusing at the same time. I definitely think he would have stood a much better chance against Vegeta, maybe even beat him if you think about it. But then again, Vegeta could have just gone Super Saiyan 2 or 3 if he was able to and just defeat him with no problem. And the reason I say this is I definitely think for a 100% fact that Vegeta can turn Super Saiyan 3, because if two kids who are significantly weaker with less training can go Super Saiyan 3, there's no way that Vegeta can. Alright. Hey, is your boy Blackenfist a faggot? No. And I don't like using the term faggot, but he's not a homosexual if that's the question you're asking. Why is Hercule such a bitch? Because he's weak for comparing himself to the Z Fighters, and I don't know. You know, he's scared. I mean, he's really not that strong. I mean, Krillin's kind of bitchy too himself, but I mean, Krillin's had some brave moments in the series. Alright, let's see. If King Kai would have taught the fighting techniques to the other Z Fighters, do you think they would have phased out as fast as they did in the series, or do you think they might have been able to have a bigger impact than what they did after the Frieza saga? Also, why do you think he didn't teach them? Kevin Steiner. I mean, honestly, this is where I say it comes to writing. You gotta factor in that the filler episodes imply more about what King Kai did training with them than the actual manga did. In the manga, we just saw them on King Kai's planet and we assumed that they trained, but we never really saw any training sequences themselves. So when you factor that in, I definitely think when you look at King Kai, you gotta say to yourself that if he had taught them those techniques, they could have been stronger, but I don't think it would have been enough to make an impact. I mean, maybe Piccolo with Kaioken can make a bigger difference against, you know, Frieza, but I can't, maybe he would be able to defeat second form with an easier, you know, with an easier time, but I definitely don't think it would have made that big of a difference, considering the fact that at some point in Dragon Ball Z, if you weren't a Saiyan, you were useless. And there comes a point where you just need to have another level of Super Saiyan to beat the major villains. I have a dilemma for you. You will need to become a 4-foot tall anthropomorphic anime cat, but you can absorb powers and summon things from television and movies. Example, absorb the Saiyan power, have a lightsaber, summon Bill and Ted's phone time booth. I don't necessarily know what you're asking me here. This is kind of interesting. I mean, Kaisen Jack, if you can please explain what you mean more in the comment section, please do so if you're watching this video. But I'm really confused as to what you mean by, you know, absorbing all these powers. I mean, from what you're telling me, this sounds kind of like Kirby. But I don't know, because you know how Kirby can use lightsabers and all of that stuff. And Bill and Ted, I remember that was like a movie with those two guys who went back in time. But I don't necessarily understand your question, sorry. Alright, let's see. Goku versus Superman video, please. The thing is, alright, I'll say this really quick. I started gaining popularity on YouTube after the whole Goku versus Superman thing. So much to the point where Blackenfist had done it months before I was even making Dragon Ball Z segments. So, to me, if I were to go and do that, I would rather have a YouTube debate with somebody who's a Superman fan instead of doing a whole video doing the comparisons, because I do read comics to a minor degree. Obviously not as much, because I read the Yu Yu Hakusho and Dragon Ball Z mangas so much. That's why I obviously know them better than other mangas. But I mean, for Goku versus Superman, I just think it's an outdated topic, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I do personally think Goku would win, but I'm trying not to be biased because of the fact that I feel like Superman has more limits. But then again, I'm not a big Superman guy. When it comes to DC comics, the only one I really like is, Batman and Thor. I really like Marvel comics more. So I don't think I would be able to do a video just comparing them. But if I ever do a video, it would be arguing with somebody who knows Superman better than I do. Hey Qaaman, can you do a Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 on your PC as a gameplay? I don't think that game exists as a gameplay. But if it did, I mean, I don't really see the point in playing it. The thing is I actually had Budokai Tenkaichi 3 for the Wii, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I feel like I was one of the best players on earth. I was really fucking good at that game. Like, seriously fucking good, to the point where I would have like people stack like entire teams against me, and I would just pick Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, and I would just wipe out Super Saiyan 4 Gogetas and Vegetos and Omega Shenrons and just wiping them out. Like, that's how good I was at that game. And obviously I wouldn't be able to beat those guys with Hercule, but I could hold my own. And I don't think I would ever be able to play this game on the PC unless they have like, like a PC mod version of it. But I think Budokai Tenkaichi 3 had its time, and I'm looking forward to Xenoverse, which I just recently heard was released for the PC. And for those of you who are watching this, don't say anything in the comments, but I will make a future video on that. Alright, fun thoughts on Hunter x Hunter. I don't know it well enough to really give you a good comment, but I know that it's similar to Yu Yu Hakusho. What's the best cereal? Frosted Flakes, hands down. It's not even a question. Frosted Flakes is the best cereal out there. Alright, hey Qaaman, do you think that Gohan could turn Super Saiyan 3 against Cell, and would the next battles, Dabura and Majin Buu, do you think he would win, or at least hold his own against Fat Buu for a while? I mean, I think if Gohan could turn Super Saiyan 3 against Cell, Cell would be easy. Dabura would be a joke, because you could argue that Gohan may have even been able to defeat Dabura with Super Saiyan 2. Because, the fight still had a lot more. I mean, it was an interrupted fight, and when you look at the fact that, Goku Super Saiyan 3 said he could defeat Fat, later on in the series. I definitely think Gohan would be weaker than Goku, but I mean, it's Super Saiyan 3, maybe he might be able to beat him too. So I definitely think he would be able to at least hold his own, at least. Qaaman, Xenoverse Kai here. I'm gonna really need your help. Can you tell Blackenfist and Thundershot to subscribe to Ultimate Super Saiyan, because he has some great vids? I mean, if Blackenfist and Thundershot watch this video, sure, why not? I mean, I got a bunch of questions, and I might forget to ask him, but Ultimate Super Saiyan has to, give. He would have to show him, you know, he would have to show me his videos on his own for me to, really give him a proper analysis. All right, looks like I'm gonna finish 5 more questions here because I know which one I want to finish off with. Did you hear there are plans for Michael Myers to be a downloadable content in Mortal Kombat X? Yes, I did hear that rumor, and I wouldn't be surprised if it actually happens. And the reason why I say this is because if you've played Mortal Kombat, I call it Mortal Kombat 9, but other people call it Mortal Kombat Complete Edition. If you played that game, you would know that in the PC version they have Freddy Krueger, and I believe in the PlayStation 3 version they have Kratos from God of War. I don't know who they have in the Xbox version, but because of Freddy Krueger being in the game, I definitely think that it's definitely possible for Michael Myers to be in it. Alright, maybe not particularly interesting question, but what if Vegeta ended up being controlled by Babidi? I don't think Vegeta would be able to be controlled by Babidi in any circumstance because his mind is so... Vegeta is so mentally strong that I can't see him being controlled by him. What if the world knew Gohan killed Cell? I had already answered this question earlier, which means that I can maybe answer 2 more questions. I could probably answer 3 questions now. Alright, did you ever play Super Dragon Ball Z? Trust me, it is worse than Sagas and Taiketsu. I've played all the games that I listed. So, obviously, at some point, I probably said in another questionnaire that I didn't think Sagas and Taiketsu were good games. I do think Sagas and Taiketsu were the worst Dragon Ball Z games out there. I've never played Super Dragon Ball Z, so I really can't say anything about that, sorry. Alright, let's see. Can you please make a video that explains how Bardock survived Frieza's... Oh my god. Okay, can you please make an episode that explains how Bardock survived Frieza's blast to planet Vegeta and went back to the past and fought Frieza's ancestor Chilled? An episode of Bardock. I'm confused and I will thank you a lot. Thanks and I love your vids. Okay, you sound like a nice guy, so I'm gonna be nice today. Bardock never survived Frieza's blast. And for those of you who know what I'm talking about, you would know that I've been asked this several times and it's not that it's your fault asking me this question, it's just I've been asked this question a lot and I've always had to explain this. Bardock never survived Frieza's blast. He died. The thing is that in the episode of Bardock, that was not canon. Now there are going to be people in the comment section who are going to say, well, Qaaman, there was a manga clip of it that I did read, and that is not true. All of this was a what if to show a backstory on how the legend of the Super Saiyan was transferred into Frieza's family. That's why Frieza's family is so afraid of the Super Saiyan threat, because one of Frieza's ancestors was killed by another Saiyan. Now the reason why they used Bardock instead of another random character is they felt that Bardock can relate more to us as the viewing public because of the fact that we know who Bardock was, and it would make sense for a person like Bardock to obviously kill Frieza because of how much hatred he had for him, but instead of killing Frieza he would have killed Chilled. That's what episode of Bardock was. He never survived the blast, he died just like everyone else, and it doesn't make any sense. I want you to think about this for a second. Is it possible for you to get hit by a blast and go back in time in Dragon Ball Z? No. If that's the case, then future Gohan should have went back in time when the androids blasted him, and I could say the same thing for a lot of other characters. It doesn't make any sense. It never happened. Bardock died. And I hope I answered your questions. Thank you for saying you love my videos. 20 and 19 versus 15 and 14. Well, based off of the movie, which is not canon, I'm going to have to say 15 and 14 because, 15 and 14 held their own against Super Saiyans. You know what I mean? They held their own against, Super Saiyan Vegeta and Super Saiyan Trunks. And because of that, I'm going to have to say they're stronger than 20 and 19. Because when you look at Vegeta, he wiped out 19 with no problem, and he was toying with him, and 20 was weaker than Piccolo, so I would definitely say 15 and 14 are stronger. And this is going to be the last question that I will answer for today. Why don't the Saiyans on Earth keep nearly killing each other, then healing up via Dende or Senzu Bean? Wouldn't it help them get infinite Zen Kai boost? Yes, but at the same time, I mean, I don't think anybody wants to go through that. I mean, you gotta consider, yes, Zen Kai boosts are strong, but do you want to voluntarily just, hey, let me just keep nearly getting killed? Who knows? It might hit a vital organ and you might actually get killed one of the times. So I definitely don't think it's something that they would want to volunteer to do. And that does it for today, guys. As a matter of fact, you know what? I'm gonna answer one more question, because this question is really intriguing and I want to close off with this. Goku versus Superman video, I already answered that. Alright, hey Qaaman, I was wondering, if Goten was able to go Super Saiyan way before Gohan when he was a child, does that mean that Goten was stronger than Super Saiyan Gohan before the Cell fight? Just a random question. Why was Goten born with Goku's hairstyle when Gohan was not, even though his hair does? Alright, I don't know if your question was cut off by the character limit, but I don't think Goten was as strong as Gohan was before he fought Cell. I mean, and when you factor it in, because that Gohan, you know, I mean, you gotta consider that Gohan had gone into the hyperbolic time chamber and he had already trained with Goku. So I definitely think that Gohan was stronger than that Goten. But Blackenfist and I are gonna upload a video not too long from now of talking about, you know, Goten and Trunks and who we thought had more potential. So it's a pretty good question. And as far as his hairstyle, I don't necessarily think his hairstyle has anything to do with it, because, I mean, honestly, I mean, I don't want to take a notch, you know, thumbs down Toriyama for doing something, but I think it's just laziness on Toriyama's part, because if you look throughout Dragon Ball Z, there's a ton of Goku lookalikes like Turles, Bardock, Goku Jr., Goten. I mean, Gohan looks similar to Goku, but not exactly like Goku, and you know, I just thought that Toriyama just felt like just drawing another Goku just to, you know, make it simpler for him. So that's why I think Goten did it. But that's basically it. And I also think it has to do with the fact that Goten was trying to replace Goku at some point. But that's basically what I think about that, and I'd like to thank all of you guys for watching this questionnaire. I'm sorry I've been, you know, a little behind on these. I still have 6,274 questions to go. But please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys. And check out my newest video on what if Krillin killed Vegeta.